Well, the time is just gone 16 minutes past 9, and this hour of news and views is sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. We continue with the broadcast this morning, and still to come, we are taking a look at Israel's genocide of Palestinians, talking about violations of South African nationals and citizens who are serving in the IDF. And this has been a major issue, a major talking point for a very, very long time. In fact, for years, for well over a decade right now. And also, a little later on in the program, we will be taking up Fired Up with Hafiz Imran Chunara, a personal excellence mentor and CEO at Africa Muslims Agency. Salam Media and Primex yesterday, the handover of a borehole at the Gravel Primary School in Lenasia. We will be talking with the principal of the school and also taking a look at a water project making a difference in an old age home. And that will be with our very own Appa Mariam Mia and also Shakira Taib. So all of that to come from now right until 10 a.m. on this day of Jummah. And we trust and hope you are having a blessed Jummah, inshallah. Let us remind ourselves that let's get close to the mercy and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recite abundant durood on our beloved Master Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And don't forget to recite Surah Kahf on this day of Jummah. But right now we're going across to be joined by lecturer in political science at UNISA and also a member of a researcher at Media Review Network, Dr. Ahmed Haroon Jhazbhay. Dr. Ahmed, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. Jummah Mubarak to you and the listeners.
Yes, for over a decade, this whole issue surrounding Israel, genocide of Palestinians, violations by South African nationals, and those that are rendering services to the IDF. And we know for a long time, in fact, going back even into 2014, where dossiers were lodged with the National Prosecuting Authority, and nothing has basically come out. And once again, we need to, last year, or even during throughout this year, this was a major talking point. Dr. Naledi Pandor at that point in time alluded to it as well. And once again, this is a topic that is going to be ongoing until these issues are taken seriously, and particularly looking at a lawfare. We've seen what Advocate Ziad Patel has basically done as well. So, these are issues that now that we have a government of national unity, we've got conflicting ideologies within this government of national unity. It's going to be interesting to see what develops.
Yes, indeed, Inayat. This current lodgement of at the NPA is a continuation of the 2022 South African Zionist terrorism corridor probe initiated by attorney Ziad Patel, the Media Review Network, as well as the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign in Cape Town. And this time we added those South Africans who have served in the IDF in the current Gaza genocide. There are 8 South Africans that we have managed to gain evidence of their involvement in the current war on Gaza. And we've lodged that on the 9th of July with the NPA at the headquarters in Pretoria. The NPA have acknowledged receipt of this dossier. It's 103 pages long. It starts off, naming those who are involved, the soldiers, as well as the leadership of the State of Israel. And goes into detail regarding the context which it is lodged, as well as the current context of the 2023 Operation Al-Aqsa flood as a response to, the years, 75 years of genocide, epistemicide, and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, not only in Gaza. So we have a very comprehensive dossier, which we've handed over. And it reminds me, a few days ago, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, said that, if anyone has evidence of South Africans serving in the IDF, they should bring it forward. He's clearly not aware of our current dossier, whereas we've handed this forward to the NPA. So I believe, as was the case with the Gaza docket previously, as was the case with terrorism probe in 2022, and this, it all comes down to political will. Does the political leadership in the country have the willpower to implement its own laws? Chief amongst them, the Foreign Military Assistance Act and the Protection of Constitution Against Terrorism and Related Activities Act. So there are a number of acts which need to be implemented by the government. It appears that there is a form of Zionist exceptionalism in this country, that they believe that they are an exception to the laws of this country, that because this is the so-called promised land and they are, according to them, defending it against Hamas, that they have a right to go against our very own laws. But our laws clearly state that anyone who wants to participate in a foreign army, whether it's a dual citizen or whoever it may be, needs to have permission of South African authorities. And according to local authorities, no local South African has permission to serve in the IDF. So we call upon and we try to impress upon the political leadership as well as NPA to implement the laws. The hard work has been done by MRN, by PSC, by attorney Ziad Patel. Evidence has been provided. One thing Zionists cannot refrain from is to gleefully punt their war crimes on on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. So we call upon the authorities to implement their laws so that we can hold South Africans account, any South Africans, not just Jewish South Africans, Zionist South Africans. In the same way we held account the Tulsi twins for their mistake that they made. So we call upon the South Africans to equally hold South African Zionists who have served in Israeli forces during the various genocides.
Yes. Well, clearly, this is going to be a test for legislation. This is going to be the test for the powers that be. This is going to be the test for the government as well. And, you mentioned Ronald Lamola now was Minister of International Relations, but also coming from a background where he was formerly the Minister of Justice. To a large extent, he obviously led the whole issue to the ICJ as well. And this is now a matter. Also, a request for referral to the International Criminal Court. So this is absolutely important on whether this country will be able to withstand this test, considering that there is some history, Dr. Ahmed. I spoke about 10 years ago when dossiers were submitted. They were left unopened by the NPA as well, which has become a burning issue. It has been a sore point. And hopefully this time around a lot more pressure could be put, but also at the same time the whole the structure of government has changed. We've got this government of national unity. We've got conflicting ideologies. We've got the DA on the one side that have been actively supporting the Zionist regime. There are other players in the political arena, in the political space, in the government of national unity that have been pushing the pro-Israel, pro-Zionist agenda. So all of this put together is going to be very, very interesting to see how South Africa responds, and the ANC being the larger of the parties in this government of national unity, they still hold the cards.
Yes, this government of national unity, which we all foresaw coming, has unfortunately thrown a spanner in the works. But on the bright side, the ANC has held on to key ministries such as state security, such as Ministry of Justice, such as international relations. So those are key ministries to ensure that the ICJ case continues. And it appears that the ANC has managed to ensure that that case would carry on. But obviously there are going to be a lot of pullback and a lot of pushback from the likes of the Minister of Sports and Culture, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, probably the most for overt pro-Zionist in the cabinet. John Steenhuisen, you've got IFP members there who are pro-Zionist. You have UDM who are pro-Zionist. So there are a lot of Zionists within the cabinet. It's the most Zionist cabinet in South Africa's history. So this definitely will make things a little more challenging. And again, it boils down to the issue of political will. Will the government, I don't know about you, but I've noticed a bit more quietness from the ANC on this issue of Palestine since the elections in the last month and a half. They've been a bit more quiet. Maybe perhaps, focus had been on getting this forming this government of national unity, and now that it's been formed, president has been sworn in, ministers have been sworn in, parliament has been officially opened last night. So perhaps now we will see some movement. Obviously the ICJ case is still in a preliminary stage, and that will take a very long time. And we've had many engagements with the people at the NPA. Those that are involved in the case. There's been a lot of pussyfooting. There's a lot of delaying tactics. It's clear that this case is political. It has, international ramifications. And many parties have been calling upon South Africa to abandon this, the ICJ case. So even our case, the Zionist terrorism corridor probe, will face hurdles. We are not naive about that, but we will continue to push. We'll continue to push the Ministry of Justice. DIRCO will continue to push the presidency to ensure that it implements its very own laws. These are not, first and foremost, if you look at simply the issue of the South Africans serving in the IOF, this is a very clear violation of the Foreign Military Assistance Act. Very clear violation. And we've done the evidence for them. There have been many social media postings. So it calls upon the NPA to actually go ahead. And, we've seen with the state capture cases and stuff, very few have made it to court, let alone a successful conviction. So
Yes.
whilst we are aware that there are challenges, we will remain steadfast and resolute in our desire to hold South Africans who have served in the Israeli terror forces accountable for their actions.
Well, exactly. But also, I think what is important to understand is to make sure that we have effective lobby groups, Dr. Ahmed, so that these voices can be actually raised in Parliament, in the corridors of power. And this is absolutely important. Where in the past we had one or two politicians that could raise these issues in Parliament directly with the ministers concerned, whether we're talking of the Minister of Justice, through to getting through to the NPA or even international relations. We need to have those voices. And I think what is important at the time and what is absolutely critical is to have those lobby groups and to reach out to people who will raise these issues and raise their voices in Parliament.
Yes, previously you had, Sheikh Imam, Allied Movement for Change. He was part of the NFP at that time, who raised many issues, including the visa issues, amongst a host of others. And he was one politician that held and asked difficult questions in this regard. And we need that. We have, for example, Arif Subrati of the ANC, who can ask those questions of his own party. So whilst it seems to be a bit less, we still do have key individuals within political parties that can ask questions. The EFF is not part of the GNU, and despite certain obstacles, of course, with the EFF, we can use certain political party and certain politicians to continuously ask these difficult questions, and this is part of the strategy to hold these politicians accountable, to hold their own parties accountable. So there are still avenues available. There were in the past small parties that ask the difficult questions and politicians that ask the difficult questions, and we'll continue to utilize certain key MPs to ask these questions, because there are question and answer sessions where you can ask the president certain questions, you can ask certain ministers certain questions, as well as the portfolio committees. So there are still avenues available, and we must continue to avail. Whilst we're not naive to think that it's going to be easy, we will continue to knock on those doors and to ensure that that the terrorism corridor probe, and the 8 South Africans we've identified 8 so far. There are more. They're likely that there are more, but this is where we have a lot of evidence on these 8 South Africans, and we're going to make sure that we ask these difficult questions of the ministers, of the president, and so on in the seventh administration. We understand the complexities that they face, but we are not going to let up from our perspective.
Well, we certainly will follow developments, Dr. Ahmed Haroon. Jazakallah khairan so much for that and for your time with us this morning. Have yourself a wonderful Jummah ahead, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. Shukran for having me.
Dr. Ahmed Haroon Jhazbhay was us lecturer in political science at UNISA and also a researcher at Media Review Network. We're going to go for an air break. We come back and fire up with Hafiz Imran Chunara.